Let's start with the return of geopolitics on the topic of strengthening ties between Russia and China, on the security of Taiwan, on the European and the American Indo-Pacific strategies, which may align or which may not. Our keynote speaker on the topic is Ambassador Kyudok, representative of the Republic of Korea to Hungary. His Excellency is a researcher and a professor too, and has been in Hungary for close to 2.5 years now. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, the distinguished guests, and the close friends of the fellow ambassadors. I thank you for joining us today, and I have the great pleasure of extending my warm and sincere appreciation to Equilibrium Institute and all the distinguished panels and great audience this afternoon. I'm asked to speak on strategic importance of Indo-Pacific and why we need to cooperate jointly on developing and resilient but robust strategies. We are so interconnected with each other, not only for economy, but also for security and prosperity as well. The Indo-Pacific region comprises of 60% of the world's GDP, and it is Europe's second largest export market. Korea is now currently pursuing cooperation with the EU in areas of green agenda, cybersecurity, counterterrorism, digital partnership, maritime security, global connectivity, and security and defense cooperation. Every day, more than 2,000 ships are navigating across the ocean between the various ports of Europe and East Asia. Korea alone depends upon 90% of strategic exports and oil shipment through maritime, sea lanes, including Suez Canal, Indian Ocean, Malacca Strait, South China Sea, and Taiwan Strait. Moreover, Korea is proud of sharing the values of democracy, rule of law, and international rule-based order with the members of the EU family. Europe has been a reliable partner for Korea, and protecting energy security is vital interest for us. Despite VUCA environment, Korea would like to have sustainable trade environment and wish to find ways to promote mutual benefits to guarantee the private and corporate interests through opening the market. Let me touch briefly on the returning of geopolitics. The Russian invasion to Ukraine causes supply chain disruptions and increased vulnerabilities in almost every country in this world. However, I'd like to remind you the consequences of the dispatch of North Korean combat forces into Ukraine today. This must be a wake-up call for all of us. North Korea had experienced heavy casualties, 4,700 injured out of 12,000 troops, including 600 killed in action. This is almost 1/3 of the total forces stationed in the front line of the Kursk area. But they decide to remain in the Russian territories, and they are learning valuable lessons on how to fight the modern war. The problem is that the Russian government promised to provide North Koreans with military technologies and the economic rewards in return for North Korean sacrifices. It is estimated that Russian government paid more than $7.1 billion. This collaboration directly escalates the situation in East Asia. As we observed, the conflict here in Ukraine will lead to a potential risk of Taiwan Strait and the Korean Peninsula. On May 8th, Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin announced joint communique at the Victory Day of Moscow, denouncing the US influence in the region and Europe's effort to support Ukraine. The two also strongly oppose unilateral junction against North Korea. On the same day, North Korea test-fired ballistic missiles toward the East Sea. This action is a clear violation of a series of UN Security Council resolutions. Pyongyang has tested its ballistic missiles in the war of Ukraine. Their probability to hit the target has been dramatically increased, and this improvement endangers the safety of South Korea, Japan, and the US forces in Indo-Pacific. North Korea has supplied several thousand tons of ammunition, artillery, missiles to Russia, while urging Russia for higher level of military technologies, including satellite launching, building of nuclear submarines, new fighter plane squadron, and collecting military intelligence through reconnaissance airplanes. In this kind of arms trade will be continued without any effective countermeasures from the international society. Risk for another conflict in East Asia and the Indo-Pacific will highly likely to increase. China, Russia, as well as North Korea are now closely watching over how the Trump administration will respond. If they are condoned, the possibility of provocations will likely to intensify. Ladies and gentlemen, we are commemorating the 75th anniversary of the Korean War, which abruptly started on Sunday morning of June 25th, 1950, by the Communist forces of North Korea and supported by then Soviet Union and China. It sacrificed more than 1 million civilians and more than 1.5 million soldiers from both sides. We should not forget the lessons of the Korean War, and we need to be better prepared. We must show that a strong resolve, any kind of provocation will be deterred with a strong determination and profound defense capabilities of allied forces. As tension escalates in the Taiwan Strait, the possibility of a full-scale crisis between China and Taiwan is no longer merely theoretical. It is increasingly considered a plausible trigger for regional instability. In such a scenario, the Korean Peninsula would not be immune. The Trump administration, characterized by its American first posture, was interpreted by the people in the region as skeptical of traditional alliances. It would have significant implications for South Korea and Japan if this kind of misunderstanding will not be controlled. A Taiwan crisis would inevitably draw American attention, resources, and strategic focus toward the Indo-Pacific as a whole. Under the Trump administration, which in the past signaled a desire to reduce US military commitment overseas and reframe alliance obligations through a lens of cost-benefit analysis, there is a concern that such a shift could come at the expense of US engagement on the Korean Peninsula. South Korea may find itself relatively marginalized if President Trump once again questions the utility of maintaining large-scale forward deployment in South Korea. In this context, North Korea could see this as an opportunity. Pyongyang has historically acted when it perceives distraction or division among its adversaries, namely Washington, D.C., Seoul, and Tokyo. There is a high possibility that a major crisis in the Taiwan Strait would be a textbook case of opening up a series of provocations by North Korea. Many people in South Korea concerned that the possibility of entangling into the Taiwan crisis. They might think that South Korea's overt involvement could trigger China's economic retaliation as it had experiences following the 2018 US-SAR deployment in Korea. That is why we South Koreans are working so hard to cooperate with the Trump administration to find workable solutions to maintain the strong alliances. At the same time, we want to expand our strategic partnership with the European allies to protect the peace, keeping the values of democracy while restoring the international norms and rule-based order. Beyond the full cooperation of NATO and EU, South Korea is now in the beginning of discussing the defense issue with the UK and Australia in particular. Both London, Canberra, and Seoul have aligned interests in preserving freedom of navigation, upholding international norms, and mitigating international security threats, particularly those posed by China's assertiveness and North Korea's continued provocations. In terms of defense collaboration, South Korea's advanced capabilities in shipbuilding, aerospace, cybersecurity, and artificial intelligence present substantial opportunity for deeper engagement with the UK and other strategic partners. Joint initiatives in defense research, co-production, and technology transfer could significantly bolster mutual capabilities and improve interoperability, ultimately enhancing the collective operational effectiveness of both countries. Leveraging each country's unique technologies, strengths, such as South Korea's expertise in electronics and automation, and the UK's experience in advanced materials and propulsion systems, would amplify the effectiveness and sophistication of joint projects. I hope that real-time intelligence sharing, bilateral training programs, and joint simulations could further enhance mutual preparedness significantly and increasing the effectiveness of responding the various cyber attacks from the adversaries. I will give you another example of security cooperation between South Korea and Australia. South Korean-Australia Cybersecurity Pact could further enhance coordination on emerging threats. A comparative pact would include provisions for physical elements of cyber infrastructure, such as subsea cables. Collaborative projects, such as the development of regionally secured data hubs, could protect sensitive information flows from geopolitical disruptions. Joint surveillance efforts through AI-based monitoring system and satellite tracking could strengthen real-time detection of disruptions. Both countries' navies should also expand maritime patrols along key submarine cable routes to deter adversarial interference. A regional submarine cable security task force could also be established to ensure ongoing coordination and rapid response to emerging threats. I believe establishing a joint Indo-Pacific digital security forum would further institutionalize collaboration and knowledge sharing on best practices. Increase the investment in training programs for cyber resilience experts could also ensure that both countries maintain a highly skilled personnel to respond to future challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, South Korea will remain committed to contribute further to stand together with the NATO, EU, and like-minded allies against any aggression toward peace-loving states in Europe and elsewhere in Indo-Pacific. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.